Thank you so much, Alan. Great introduction, and I must say some very, very important words, and well formulated in every sense. I couldn't agree more. And so I think this is the perfect start out for my presentation. I probably need you guys to secure that I'm starting the presentation right. Is my presentation on the screen now? Yes,
yeah,
it is.
Coming through clearly.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Anders Lendager, and I'm the principal of Lendager Group. We started Lendager Group 9 years ago. Today we're around 60 people, and we consist of a lot of different companies searching for the solutions that needs to be part of the change towards circular economy, towards a sustainable future for the built environment. And that's a quest that's been started for me a long time ago. And now Lendager Group is an accelerating office where we are developing solutions, both very physical and process solutions for the built environment, and we are trying to provide as transparent a trace of what we are figuring out throughout the time we've been working on this, both through buildings, innovations, and also how to deal with clients. So this is actually becoming a scalable solution to sustainability for cities and buildings in north of Europe, and hopefully something that can be scaled more globally. And so the questions that a lot of us are asking ourselves and has been asking why sustainability hasn't been implemented and scaled quicker and more easy in the built environment. And some of these difficult questions that we've been trying to answer is that often risk and economy is a problem that is not being solved or addressed. And for Lendager Group, sustainability and economy is each other's prerequisites. And it has been a quest the last 9 years to create what we call a cost-neutral sustainability that creates a high-end architecture with a focus on aesthetics, just as much as a focus on creating sustainable solutions that doesn't exist in the built environment today. And the built environment, we have to remember, is one of the most conservative sectors in the world. I think a consultant told me that we were on the third lowest place for all industries, only overtaken by hunting and fishing. So that means that we really have some acceleration to do. But acceleration within sustainable architecture is also a very big blue ocean of potential that we architects actually have the best tools to solve. And every time we look into problems that are challenging our climate, we really see that there is very, very big and important solutions that we can find, innovate, and implement in our architecture. And that's what my lecture is about today. One of the most important influences, Buckminster Fuller, probably for many of us, said this sentence about kind of the synthesis between many different types of capabilities as an architect. And I think today the monochrome architecture firm is really, really challenged. My architecture firm consists of a variety of potential from, of course, architects, engineers, but also many different thought leaders and thinkers that can challenge what we need to challenge in this change towards a more circular and sustainable value chain in the building sector. So I do agree on this, and I think it's very important to look into that. So if you need to take this serious, you have to look at your own building, your own organization as well. And your own organization as an architecture firm need to be challenged as well. And I will come back to that with a question about what is architecture as a company in the future. The first project that I did was Upcycle House. It's a very small project. It's done in a very boring context in Nyborg. It's one of the, I can say this now that I'm not in Denmark, one of the most boring small cities in Denmark. But the interesting part about this was, could you build a very sustainable single-family house only using upcycled materials? And at this point in 2011, the question was, what is upcycling in general? Could you take materials like this, beer cans, soda cans, newspapers, textile, and upcycle it, find products where you could do a single family house? And what would that mean? One question that started it all is something that you've seen many projects of, which is the container. But what does that represent? It represents an object from a different industry that becomes obsolescent, a waste product that you take into the building sector, and all of a sudden is, instead of a new structure in concrete, steel, or wood. And it represents space and value. But if you ask that to every single product in the building, how would that look? Where would insulation come from? What about the windows, the roof, the facades, the installations, all this? That's what we did with this house that's made out of paper sheets. That's the black sheets, aluminum from beer and soda cans, which is the aluminum, but also inside where we use textiles, bottles from plastic that was shredded and upcycled, wood, insulation, and all these different items that created a quite unique single family house. But the interesting part here was that we saved 86% CO2 compared to a benchmark house. And it costed 1.7 million crowns, which is just around half a million euros. So it was a very, very cheap house and a very, very sustainable house. And that led to the next question: what organism can actually scale this into a commercial building? Is that actually possible? And why isn't it possible? So I started looking at my own organization that at that time just was an architecture company. And I could see that I needed to create some new types of businesses. This is our management consultancy business that guides businesses to find their personal sustainability agenda. Our architecture business is designing, drawing, and making all the design documents to realize a building. But what we could see was that in the quest for sustainable buildings that evidently made a difference, we couldn't find the right materials that could be implemented in a commercial way when we wanted to build with upcycled materials. So I created a new company called Upcycle Products that's actually delivering these materials to our own projects and now also to other contractors and architects. So this is kind of our challenge. 70% of all virgin materials is used in buildings and in cities. So how can we actually bear this response without reacting with new solutions, new innovations, so reduce CO2 emissions that are so high as 40% of all? That's a responsibility that we really need to bring to our tables and come with answers, because it's not in 10, 20 or 30 years we can accept the solutions. It is today. It's really today we need to act. So what we can see is that we also have a CO2 emission that represents materials, and 50% of the total CO2 emissions comes from the constructions. It's the surfaces, it's the matter that we're dealing with, and it's immense. So for us, what we're doing is to work with these 5 topics as our main topics. This is what we want to solve in all our designs. We don't have any architecture projects, any projects right now that are not addressing these 5 topics vastly. We don't have what we call bread and butter projects. We only have serious sustainability projects that's trying to push the agenda as much as possible. And that's why our clients come to us, because that's what we are good at delivering in. Often when talking about resources, this is just to kind of show that it's a vast potential. In Denmark, we have 12 million tons of waste. We are one of the biggest waste producers in the world, unfortunately. But if you look into the construction sector, we are using 10 million tons of materials. And just to put these two in front of each other as a potential, we have enough waste annually to create the coming buildings. We just need to organize and urban harvest these potentials. An important thing when we talk about sustainability is also that it's about consumption. And where we are today, every time we create a sustainable solution, we create something that pushes an unsustainable product out of the market. So in that case, growth is our tool to scalability of sustainability, which is very important agenda for us. That has been a very different agenda, that less is more in the more ecological approach to sustainability. We do believe that the drivers of scalability and business is what we are needing for this to scale up and accelerate. And that is important for now and the next coming decades. The butterfly diagram is something that you probably have seen before. It is an important tool. We use it often to ask ourselves, with the resources we stand in front of, what is the solution for the design and the architecture in this moment, at that stage of the project? And I'm coming back to that. Cascading is one of the most important things of understanding how a used resource can be added more value going up or down. And prior, you always talk about cascading with wood. You have a big wood chunk and then you cut it up more and more. But we found out that this approach with cascading goes for all materials, glass, brick, plastic, and so on, that it's your choices about how you handle these materials that can bring more value using less energy to produce an upcycled product. So going into some of the linear projects, here's a vast image of some of the projects that we've done over the time. And the project that I'm going to start out with is Upcycle Studio. We believe it's one of the first commercial circular economy projects in the world, where we are actually leaning in and looking at some of the biggest waste problems that we have in the world, and upcycling them to products that is being used on a commercial agenda, not costing more, but generating high sustainability and high value. Here's just some of the places in Denmark where we harvested our waste resources to upcycle them. One of the main problems is concrete. This is how we often handle it. Unfortunately, we crush it and put it in the roads, which is a highly unsustainable approach, because they're creating chemicals in our drinking waters, which is a very, very big problem. So we need to create new circular solutions for that. So what we've done here is to find solutions for these three items. Wood, where we have a lot of wood waste. We have almost 400 tons in Denmark that we unfortunately just burn. We have 1 million tons of concrete and 200,000 tons of glass. So we decided, let's make a project where this becomes innovation, done with the economy we have for a normal budget of a project, which is around 10.2 million euros, this project. So what you see here is a wood facade. It's off-cut materials from a wood manufacturer that's been upcycled to new products, both inside, on the outside of the facade, but also the windows are old windows that's upcycled to new energy efficient glass and windows, and the concrete the same. Here, it's been important for us to solve a row house that here is almost 200 square meters, where you also have a way or possibility of having your own business inside, so you can kind of rent a part of the apartment to yourself, and thereby have an economy, a place where you both work and live and have a less stressful life. But here you're seeing a high detail architecture that's all made out of waste, actually 1,000 tons of waste that's been upcycled for these row houses. Here from the roofscape. And here an example of the windows that we harvested We harvested 900 old windows, cleaned them up, and tested them for U and G values, and made a whole new supply chain where we could create these 6 meters high, 4 meters wide windows consisting of 75% upcycled old thermal windows that's been kind of put in front of each other to have two layered facade material with two thermal windows. Inside the building, we have no chemistry, there is no fillers, there is no paint, there is no chemistry at all, which create an indoor environment that is way more healthy than most of new buildings or apartments being built today, which is key for healthy living as well. And here the natural surfaces, the finished surfaces, is creating an architecture that we really like, and our clients love the natural environment of the materials that all has a story. Here the concrete is harvested from the metro construction site where they have a lot of waste concrete that we've upcycled, crushed, and casted in situ on site, saving CO2, saving resources, and also having a whole new infrastructure of concrete. Here you can see the beautiful flooring, which is wood that would otherwise have been burned because they were in odd sizes and odd lengths. And here are the windows that are creating a whole facade, but also generating a daylight potential, a whole different way of accumulating this space, which is a 6 meters high space that is potential for both business and living, so high flexibility. And also the interior where we have no aluminum studs, we have no gypsum, we only have natural materials in the indoor environment. The important thing to say with this project was also that it's the fastest rented out houses in Copenhagen in the past 2 years. So it's such an important thing when you do sustainable housing that you have a client or a user, more importantly, that conceives and understands your message on sustainability, and then they want to use it. They want to embrace it. And that's why we are getting more and more projects like this, because there are a lot of Copenhageners and people in Scandinavian countries that are willing to move into these countries because the prices are the same as a normal apartment. So what we created, an immense CO2 reduction, 45% CO2 reduction for the whole project. That's a vast CO2 reduction when we're actually building in concrete, which is not a very positive CO2-wise material. We created 20 new local jobs. Sustainable architecture is a political tool. It's not just space, it's not just buildings. This is a way of engaging with the social community, creating a political scape where we're both dealing with economy and innovations, local jobs, and CO2. The Resource Rose is a project that we did almost the same time. Some of the same challenges, but harvested in a totally different way. We have 11 million buildings that are empty across Europe. Why don't we harvest them? Why don't we just simply cut them down and move them and build with these materials? That was some of the questions we asked ourselves with this project that's called the Resource Rose, where we wanted to have both row houses, apartments, and allotment gardens on the roof. Here's the section. Here's the visualization from the roof. A bridge connecting these allotment gardens where people could meet and greet, hang out, grow greens, have a beer, have a good time, and meet each other instead of have a segregated life in an urban context as we often see. So one of the challenges was, what if we could take these brick buildings from the 60s? And one of the problems with these brick buildings is that the mortar is stronger than the brick. And when you have brick, there's a mortar that's stronger than the brick, you can't separate them. So we came up with the idea of, instead of having Lego, if we should use a Danish reference, then we could build these big brio blocks, the big building blocks that instead would weigh 300 kilos, but could create 1 square meter at a time. We set that in system. It looked like this one of the first times we started cutting it down. And because no one believed in this, I needed to create my own brick company, which I own today as well. I also own a wood company and a concrete company, because the business in Denmark didn't really believe in these new innovations. So we had to start them ourselves in different partnerships. Here we are finished actually with the production, and I was very relieved at this time that we succeeded. The brown bricks are from an old brewery, Carlsberg Brewery. The red from a school, the yellow from a larger industrial area in Aalborg. So harvesting around Denmark and creating new facade elements and saving a tremendous amount of CO2, both on the bricks and the mortar, which is 1/3 of the CO2 impact on a brick building. Here, the finished building, where the architecture starts to have a totally different complexity compared to the other buildings down the road, where you can come close to them, see mistakes, but also stories that are told in each brick, creating these different kind of patterns and individuality for each element that can actually be taken down, these 3 by 3 meters, and reused in 50 or 100 years, or maybe never, but the potential of disassembling them are also a part of this. All the wood you see here in the facade is old construction wood that we've taken in, cut up, thermo-treated, and burned the surface in a Japanese way. So we impregnated them with this black charcoal as a natural way of treating the wood. The bridge that you see in the courtyard is it's an old old beam from a factory that we directly reused and craned in, and has created this bridge from one side to the other. It's been tested by engineers, of course, but just to say that it wasn't in the budget to have a bridge, but upcycling a material made it possible for this kind of 3-dimensional courtyard space to create a social interaction between the tenants and residents in a really nice way. Here's some other images. Under construction, the allotment gardens on the roof. Here's some detailing of the facades. And again, a project that saved a lot of CO2, but also converted 500 tons of waste, created new jobs. Again, a cost-neutral project that is a very successful rented out apartments and row houses today. The next stage of sustainability is maybe looking at an even larger perspective of not only resources. We did that on UN 17 Village, that is this beautiful site that is ending Ørestaden, which is a development site over the past 25 years. This is the last building plot, nature around it. And what we wanted to do was to make a regenerative building that gave more back than it's actually consuming of both waste, energy, waters, but also social sustainability. And what better to look at is than the UN Sustainability Development Goals, all 17 of them. But what is actually behind them? We found out that there was 232 indicators of how to deal with these topics. And so we spent 2 months creating this design tool that each one of these bars you can see in here is actually concrete solutions that we could design into the projects, set a price on, and also set an impact on, and then design from there. The project looks like this. It's a lot of wood buildings. 4 out of 5 of these clusters are massive wood, and the facade are made out of different types of upcycled materials. We're handling wastewater to create water you can use to actually swim in. Here, one of the not best apartments, but with a very beautiful view. We're working with the health in a totally different new way. I don't have time to go into here, but here a project where the holistic approach is being addressed at the same time as the material approach, creating kind of the next generation of sustainable buildings. Also bringing in our kind of new project we're working on now. It's in Aarhus. It's a high-rise in massive wood. It looks like this. We are way beyond this stage, but we're not allowed to show it just yet. But it's 85 meters high-rise in massive wood, where we're actually creating facades out of upcycled glass or windows, as we showed you, but also using windmills I'm not allowed to show that, but you have to imagine that old windmills is used as shadow levers on the facade as an upcycled product, taking a problem from the windmill sector, converting it into a building product that we're using on the facade of this project. One of the last projects I'm going to show you is the Olympic Pavilion that we were supposed to build this summer, but unfortunately because of Corona and the situation, it's postponed to next year, where we hope that it will be. But the idea with the Olympic Pavilion was to design an object that the Japanese people would know us from. The Danes always think that everyone knows what a Dane is. Unfortunately, not many does. And but what Japanese people know Danes from is designs from the 60s, especially chair design. So we decided to design a chair, made it out of ocean plastic, which is a problem in Asia in general, and make it so it could be disassembled from a pavilion to a chair and be sold afterwards after the 9 years of the Olympic Pavilion. The pavilion is going to look like this. It consists of 2,500 chairs that is stacked on top of each other. They create a facade on one side and a shelving system on the other side. It's built with support of wood from Fukushima, which is a challenged city because of the atomic accident, but also creating a framework for the Olympics in this period of time. Afterwards, it's being sold as chairs in Asia, and right now Tokyo University is buying a lot of them. And to a totally different project, just to show that the municipality is a very important part of also changing to circular economy. And circular economy is buildings like this, old schools that could be taken down and recycled. And what we're doing for this municipality is to upcycle these materials on site. We're using the soccer field for these materials to harvest, segregate them, prepare them to build the new building with these materials. And so in the future, these 70 buildings and steel facades will be upcycled to this kindergarten that's built on the same site. So the materials don't have to leave the site, but we're creating tenders for the municipality and a design where it can actually be upcycled on site, and the contractor can take over these materials and start building with them, where we're helping this to become a reality. And then I have a film to end this talk. I hope there's time for it. If you can't hear it, let me know. That's been a problem before, so I will try to set it off here.
We're not hearing any audio at the moment, Anders.
All right.
I can fix that for you. You have to stop sharing and reshare and turn on the audio options at the bottom.
All right. Audio in the bottom.
So when you hit the screen share button, there'll be an audio option at the bottom, optimize for audio. There's like two little tick boxes. So when you hit the screen share, you'll have a pop-up asking you what you want to share, and at the bottom of that dialog box there'll be an audio option.
All right, I have to unshare.
Yeah.
Share. Oh, there you go. All right, share, optimize screen sharing for video clip. Yep.
And the audio option as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much. And let's see if it's a success. Sorry about that. Are we working?
So what are the global challenges right now? Focusing on the many problems, we haven't succeeded on actually finding the right solutions just as it is today. So I decided that we needed to create a new kind of company that could create sustainability and do it cost neutral, and at the same time create high value architecture. Today we are 60 people working relentlessly on creating a better future for all. It's the first circular building in the world. Upcycle studios consist of upcycle windows, upcycle concrete and upcycle wood, and is saving a tremendous amount of CO2 and has converted 1,000 tons of waste to resources. The Resource Rose is one of the first projects in the world where we are converting brick waste from the 60s until today into a new facade pattern, actually cutting down old buildings and moving them into a development area and building a new building with the old building's waste. So what's unique about GR3, or træ as we call it in Danish, which means made in 85 meters height, so it's a 20 stories high building. It's the first project in the world that is using the Sustainability Development Goals, all 17 that's created by the UN. The Olympic Pavilion is made out of ocean waste and industrial waste plastic that's converted into a design of a chair and actually creating a column, a beam, a wall and a shelving system. So these 2,500 chairs all together create the pavilion for 9 weeks. And after 9 weeks, it's disassembled and become a design object sold in Asia and have a long lifespan afterwards with a use for many years to follow. You can actually take some of these large problems that we have in the world and convert them into solutions.
Anders, thank you so much for sharing your really kind of radically inventive approach to reducing the kind of astounding levels of carbon and waste in the construction industry. And what's really good to see is there's definitely no compromise in the quality. And I think everyone who I'm reading comments on the chat seems to agree you've really created a kind of compellingly beautiful architectural language from upcycling products and materials. So I'm just trying to keep track of the stream of questions coming through on the chat. And I suppose there seems to be quite a few questions around the barriers, maybe around the provenance of materials. So, you know, what kind of barriers are there to getting, for example, material passports? And another sort of factor that's come up is whether there's a sense that material suppliers maybe are disincentivized from upcycling materials for commercial reasons. Do you have any kind of comment on either of those 2 points?
Yes, I mean, obviously, a lot of these kind of material passport or LCAs or EPDs or whatever we want to call them are, of course, extremely important in the kind of challenge on scaling some of these materials up. What these types of passports or identification of the material is actually doing is that it's showing how great the material, the sustainable material is, but in reality what we need is to have that kind of passport showing the problem with the materials that we're building with today. Because today it's legal, or you're free to build with almost whatever material and how much impact it has on the environment, and also what type of waste it ends up being. You're not really paying for that as a manufacturer of materials. So we both need to have the material passports for the new materials, but we indeed also need to have kind of a very transparent benchmark with what we're building with today, because it's not beneficial that we don't know how big an impact these materials actually has on our environment, but also on the social economy. How much you and I pay for materials that needs to be landfill and handled in a unique way is rarely something that is an economy that's connected with the manufacture of these materials. And that's just as important. But the other side of this is also that we shouldn't be too afraid of pushing this agenda, because we don't necessarily need passports and a whole structure supporting these innovations, because what these innovation needs to live up to is a buildings legislation with a framework that we can understand and that we can address with different tests. And that's actually where these innovations all of a sudden opens up for potential. We need to have fire tests, we need to have UNG values, energy labels on our windows and so forth, but it's something we can test, it's something we can find solutions for and make documentation that opens up for us to be able to use it side by side with the materials that are already in the existing building industry. And that's something that surprised me, you know, how little economy actually had to invest to get these results, to actually be par on par with the existing materials that we are building with today.
And Anders, another question really, bringing together a few points, is how this way of working might disrupt the sort of traditional linear design, specify, procure process. When do you start thinking about material selection, and how do you, for example, incorporate testing processes? So there's one question around how do you test the U values of these new window products?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think there's two very important ways of talking about this. One is the first one you're mentioning, where we are entering the world of innovations. In that case, we as architects or innovators looks at a global problem. There must be a problem we want to solve with innovation. That's one direction. In that case, you are bringing a lot of challenges on yourself that you need to solve. And in that case, you have a path of new frameworks, testing, designs, innovation, a lot of new things that you have to figure out in a supply chain. How do you create waste to a resource to a product that you can implement in a building? That's a challenge in itself. The other question is that when you've done it the first time, how do you scale it? Because you managed to show that it was possible, that it's manageable within a normal economy. But how do you scale it so other architects, contractors, clients says yes to this innovation? And that's a new ball game. What we've done at Lendager Group now is that we actually sold these innovations to a circular economy capital fund that is investing in the scalability of these innovations and only focusing on scale and sales of these products. That's a different type, as I see it, of scalability that makes it easy for everyone to use them. Because what we need right now is accessibility to sustainable materials, because it's not an art form to put a building together with sustainable materials. Then it does become a sustainable building. The problem today is the materials are not out there, and that's why we are struggling so hard as architects.
Anders, unfortunately, I think I have to wrap the Q&A up now, but I will just reiterate that words coming through on the chat include brilliant, inspiring, poetic. So you've definitely done your job here today as a truly inspirational keynote speaker, and hopefully we'll see some of the best practice from Denmark filtering through to the UK market. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.